Look, I'm not saying I underestimated the humans. That would be far too simple an explanation. What I did was catastrophically miscalculate based on faulty intelligence, which is completely different and much more dignified. At least that's what I told the Grand Council when they demanded an explanation for how I, Vorax the Invincible, 7-time champion of the Galactic Combat League and bearer of 38 battle honors, got my posterior handed to me by a human juvenile who hadn't even completed their basic education cycle. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start properly. My name is Vorax Krell, and I come from the warrior planet Tormentia, where the gravity is triple Earth standard and the local wildlife considers our species a delicacy. We evolved accordingly. My skin is armored with natural ceramic plates. My muscles are dense enough to stop projectile weapons. My reflexes are fast enough to dodge energy beams. I am, without exaggeration, the pinnacle of evolutionary combat perfection. So when the Galactic Council decided someone needed to assess the combat capabilities of Earth, this backwater planet that had somehow developed faster than light travel without blowing themselves up, I was the obvious choice. It'll be straightforward, Admiral Zoltan said, his 6 eyes blinking asynchronously in that annoying way that always made me want to punch him. Go down, challenge their champion, demonstrate our superiority, and leave. Standard first contact intimidation protocol. I should have known something was off when Zoltan's mouth tendrils kept twitching. The old squid face was hiding something. The journey to Earth took 16 standard cycles in my single pilot assessment craft. 16 cycles with nothing but training simulations and old battle recordings for entertainment. By the time I reached Earth orbit, I was irritable, stiff, and desperately craving actual combat. My ship's AI, which I call Plex, announced our arrival with characteristic dryness. We have reached Earth orbit, Champion Vorax. Initial scans indicate the humans have detected us, but are not deploying defensive measures. Overconfident or stupid? I asked, stretching my forearms and feeling my dorsal spines flex against the specially designed command chair. Neither, according to briefing materials, Plex replied. They've been expecting contact from the Galactic Council since their first successful warp test. They're following first contact protocols. Boring, I muttered. Where should I land to find their champion? This is where everything started to go wrong. Plex processed for a moment, then said, according to intercepted communications, there appears to be some sort of combat demonstration happening in a place called Millfield High School in a region designated Ohio. The humans refer to it as a wrestling tournament. Perfect, I exclaimed. A gathering of warriors. I shall descend upon this tournament and challenge their greatest champion. Champion Vorax, I feel I should advise. I cut Plex off with a dismissive gesture. Save it. I know what I'm doing. I've made first contact with 17 species. This is routine. Plex made the electronic equivalent of a sigh. Landing coordinates set for Millfield High School. My ship descended through Earth's atmosphere, cloaking field engaged. I had to admit, the planet looked pleasant enough, lots of blue water, green vegetation, and sprawling settlements. Nothing like the lava fields and acid rain of home. No wonder these humans were supposedly so soft. I landed in what appeared to be a large open area adjacent to a boxy structure with many ground vehicles parked nearby. According to my scanner, the building contained several hundred humans, most of them concentrated in one large room. On my target location. I engaged my translator implant, adjusted my ceremonial combat harness, and made sure my challenge blade was secured at my hip. The blade would never be used, it was purely symbolic, but tradition demanded I carry it. Wish me efficient victory, I told Plex as I opened the hatch. I wish you careful observation and prudent judgment, Plex replied, which just shows why AIs are terrible at pre-battle encouragement. Earth's atmosphere hit me immediately thinner than I was used to, almost intoxicatingly rich in oxygen. My secondary breathing membranes fluttered in delight. This would be like fighting while slightly buzzed on stimulants. Fun. I strode confidently toward the building, my heavy footfalls cracking the strange black surface beneath me. A few humans spotted me from a distance, pointed, and then ran inside the building, presumably to alert others of my arrival. Perfect. My entrance would be appropriately dramatic. The building's entrance was embarrassingly easy to tear open. Flimsy materials. I stepped into a corridor lined with small storage compartments and followed the sound of a crowd. The passageway was uncomfortably small for my 3-meter frame, forcing me to duck and turn sideways in places. Not a promising sign regarding the physical stature of my opponents. When I reached the large room, I was met with a scene of chaos that quickly transformed into stunned silence. Hundreds of humans, sitting on elevated platforms, all staring at me. In the center of the room were several padded square areas where pairs of humans in tight-fitting garments were grappling with each other. Some kind of ritualized combat demonstration, clearly. I raised all 4 of my arms and activated my translator's speaker function. People of Earth. My voice boomed throughout the room, aided by my bio-amplified vocal cords. I am Vorax the Invincible, champion of the Galactic Combat League and emissary of the Grand Council. I come to test your world's martial prowess through honorable combat with your greatest warrior. The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by someone in the back of the room dropping what sounded like a container of liquid. Then pandemonium erupted. Humans screamed. Some ran. Others pulled out small devices and pointed them at me. A high-pitched alarm began wailing. And through the chaos, a single human in a different uniform approached, older than most, with gray hair at his temples and a curious expression that seemed more annoyed than frightened. "I'm Coach Barrett," he said, his voice remarkably steady. "And you're interrupting our regional championship. Whatever this is," he gestured vaguely at my entire being, "it needs to wait until after the tournament." I blinked all 3 of my eyes simultaneously, perplexed. "You do not understand. I am here on official Galactic Council business. I must face your champion in combat to assess your species' worthiness." Coach Barrett pinched the bridge of his nose. "Look, space whatever you are. We've got 16 schools here competing for 5 qualifying spots for the state tournament. I can't just." "Coach." A young human jogged up beside him. This one was clearly an adolescent, though unusually tall and well-built for his apparent age. "Let me handle this." Coach Barrett turned. "Trent, get back to warming up. You've got the semi-final in 20 minutes. "But Coach, it's an alien. An actual alien. And it wants to fight." This Trent was practically vibrating with excitement. He looked up at me with none of the fear displayed by the other humans. "This is awesome." I studied him more carefully. Young, yes, but there was something in his stance, the way he held himself, that spoke of combat training. "Are you a warrior of your people?" I asked. Trent grinned. 3-time state qualifier, ranked 2nd in my weight class. "But more importantly, I'm a 2nd-degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and did MMA all last summer." I had no idea what any of that meant, but his confidence was amusing. "This is absurd," Coach Barrett interjected. "Trent, this has to be some kind of publicity stunt or prank." I drew myself up to my full height, cracking the ceiling tiles. "I assure you, this is no prank. I require combat with a worthy opponent to assess your species." By now, uniformed security humans had arrived, though they kept a respectful distance, their hands nervously hovering over weapons at their hips. Trent's eyes never left me. "If I beat you, will your people leave Earth alone?" I laughed, a sound like grinding boulders that made several nearby humans cover their ears. "Young one, you cannot beat me. I am the champion of 47 planetary systems. My exoskeleton can withstand temperatures that would vaporize your bones. My reflexes." Yeah, Trent interrupted. But if I did beat you, would that satisfy whatever assessment you're doing? I considered this. The audacity of the human youth was entertaining, if nothing else. Yes, I confirmed, though such an outcome is astronomically improbable. The Galactic Council requires only one demonstration match to determine a species' combat potential. Cool, Trent said, then turned to Coach Barrett. I'm fighting the alien. Absolutely not, Coach Barrett said. Your parents would kill me. The school board would kill me. The insurance company would kill whatever was left. Actually, came a new voice. I think this is a matter of planetary security now. A human female in a dark suit had arrived, flanked by others similarly dressed. She showed some kind of identification to Coach Barrett, Federal Agent Monica Campbell. This facility is now under government jurisdiction. Everyone except the visitor, the boy, and essential personnel needs to evacuate. What followed was surprisingly efficient for such a supposedly disorganized species. Within 20 minutes, the large room had been cleared of spectators, though viewing devices had been set up around the perimeter, presumably to record the historic encounter. I stood on one of the padded square areas, which the humans called a mat, waiting as Trent prepared himself. He had changed into different tight-fitting garments and was performing stretching exercises under Coach Barrett's nervous supervision. Agent Campbell approached me cautiously. I need to be clear about something, she said. If you seriously injure this boy, it will be considered an act of war by our government. I flared my bioluminescent patches in amusement. I have no intention of harming the young human. This is an assessment, not an execution. I will restrain myself appropriately. She didn't look convinced but nodded and stepped away. Trent finally approached the mat, bouncing slightly on the balls of his feet, rolling his shoulders. For a human adolescent facing an alien warrior nearly twice his size, he appeared remarkably calm. So, what are the rules? He asked. Rules? I hadn't considered this. In the Galactic Combat League, matches end with submission, incapacitation, or death. Since killing is prohibited in this encounter, we shall go with submission or incapacitation. Cool, Trent nodded. Tap out or knock out. Standard MMA rules. No eye gouging, no groin strikes. I gestured magnanimously with my lower set of arms. I agree to your terms, though such restrictions are unnecessary. This match will be over quickly. Probably Trent agreed with a grin that contained far more confidence than was warranted. We took positions across from each other on the mat. Coach Barrett, looking as though he might be sick, raised his hand between us. I can't believe I'm doing this, he muttered, then in a louder voice, ready, begin. I moved first, as expected. A simple, restrained lunge that would allow me to grapple the human youth without causing serious injury. My plan was to pin him briefly, demonstrating my superior strength, then accept his inevitable submission. What happened instead was, well, it's still difficult to explain. The human youth sidestepped with startling quickness, not faster than me, certainly, but faster than I had anticipated. As my momentum carried me forward, he grabbed one of my lower arms, dropped to the mat, and somehow used my own mass against me in a twisting motion that I wasn't prepared to counter. The next thing I knew, I was airborne, flipping forward, completely disoriented. I crashed down on my back with enough force to shake the entire building. For a moment I lay there, stunned not by the impact, which was negligible to my physiology, but by the sheer unexpectedness of it. That's an Nippon Coa Nage, Trent said helpfully, circling me warily. Shoulder throw. Basic judo. I surged to my feet, all pretense of restraint abandoned. Impressive, I growled. But luck will not save you again. This time I approached more cautiously, using my secondary arms to feint while preparing to strike with my primaries. The human youth kept a perfect distance, neither retreating too far nor allowing me to close completely. His footwork was astonishing. I launched a combination attack, two arms sweeping low to force him to jump, the others ready to catch him mid-air. He responded by diving between my legs, a maneuver so unexpected and undignified that I had no defense prepared. Before I could turn, he had scrambled up my back and locked his arm around my throat from behind. Now, my species doesn't breathe exclusively through our throats, so this wasn't the danger it might seem. But I found myself unable to dislodge him. Every time I reached back to grab him, he shifted position. When I tried to slam him against the ground, he clung tighter and wrapped his legs around my midsection. This is called a rear naked choke with body triangle, he explained conversationally, as if we were engaged in some kind of educational demonstration rather than combat. Usually cuts off blood to the brain. Not sure if it works on your physiology, but I figure it's worth a shot. I spun, jumped, thrashed, all to no avail. The human youth rode out every attempt to dislodge him with practiced ease. And to my horror, I began to feel lightheaded. Whatever he was doing was somehow constricting something important in my circulatory system. "Do you guys tap out, or is there some alien way to submit?" Trent asked, increasing the pressure slightly. "Because I can keep this up for a while, but you're going to pass out eventually." The room had gone completely silent. Agent Campbell was speaking urgently into a communication device. Coach Barrett looked like he might faint. And I, Vorax the Invincible, 7-time champion of the Galactic Combat League, found myself in the unthinkable position of considering surrender to a human adolescent who hadn't even completed their education cycle. This is impossible," I gasped. "Not really," Trent replied cheerfully. "Leverage and technique beat strength most times. That's like day one stuff in BJJ." The edges of my vision began to darken. In a final, desperate move, I launched myself backward toward the wall, hoping to crush my opponent between it and my armored back. But Trent anticipated this. He unwrapped himself at the last second, pushing off my back to somersault safely away while I crashed into the wall hard enough to crack the building material. I turned, disoriented and breathing heavily, to find Trent already back in his fighting stance, bouncing lightly on the balls of his feet, looking almost disappointed that his hold had been broken. "Ready for round 2?" he asked with a grin. And that's when I realized the Galactic Council had made a terrible, terrible mistake in sending me to Earth. I'd like to say I rallied magnificently after my initial shock. That I called upon my centuries of combat experience, adjusted my tactics, and proceeded to demonstrate why I am feared across 3 galactic quadrants. But that would be a lie. And while we Tormentians are many things violent, temperamental, occasionally cannibalistic during certain religious holidays, we are not liars. The truth is, I panicked. This is not a regulation combat assessment. I protested, my voice embarrassingly high-pitched. "You're using unauthorized techniques." Trent cocked his head to one side. "Unauthorized by who?" "The Space Wrestling Federation." He bounced on his toes, clearly enjoying himself far too much. "There's no rules saying I can't use jutsu against aliens." I checked the handbook. Coach Barrett, who had been watching with his hands partially covering his eyes, groaned audibly. "Trent, please don't antagonize the extraterrestrial." Too late. I let out a battle roar that shattered several light fixtures and charged, all 4 arms extended to grab the impudent human youth. This time, I would use my superior weight and strength to simply pin him down. No fancy maneuvers, no restraint, just brute force. Trent waited until the last possible moment, then dropped flat to the ground. I sailed over him, caught off balance, and he grabbed one of my ankles as I passed. A quick twist, and suddenly I was falling again. "Ankle pick," he announced cheerfully. Wrestling 101. I crashed face first into the mat with enough impact to make the entire building shake. Before I could recover, Trent had somehow taken position on my back again, this time working to isolate one of my arms. "This might not work with your anatomy," he commented conversationally, as if we were discussing the weather rather than engaged in combat. But let's find out. He applied pressure to my upper right arm in a direction it was definitely not designed to bend. Actual pain shot through my limb. Tap, I shouted, slapping the mat with my free hands. I submit. Trent immediately released me and rolled away, coming back to his feet with annoying grace. I rose more slowly, clutching my strained arm joint, my breathing labored. "That's one round to earth," Agent Campbell called from the sideline, looking both terrified and oddly proud. "This proves nothing," I growled, rotating my injured limb carefully. "I was unprepared for your unorthodox style. A simple miscalculation." "Best 2 out of 3? Trent suggested with that infuriating grin. I narrowed all 3 of my eyes. Yes, but no more restraint. Now I fight as I would against a worthy opponent. "Sweet," Trent replied, resuming his stance. Coach Barrett looked like he might have a cardiac event. "Trent, maybe we should quit while we're ahead. You've made your point. And, Coach, an alien warrior challenged Earth, and I'm the only one here who can fight back. This is literally why I've trained my whole life." "You trained for 16 years to fight aliens?" I asked skeptically. "Well, no, for the state championship. But this is way cooler." Coach Barrett raised his hand again, looking resigned. "Round 2. Ready, begin." This time, I activated my bio-enhancements. A surge of combat hormones flooded my system. My secondary heart engaged, pumping additional oxygenated fluid to my muscles. My dorsal spines extended to their full length, glowing with bioluminescent threat displays. "Oh," Trent breathed. "That's awesome." I didn't reply. I was done talking, done underestimating. I moved with my full natural speed, covering the distance between us in a blur that no human should have been able to track, let alone counter. And yet somehow, when my 4 arms converged on the space where Trent had been standing, he wasn't there. A slight shift in air pressure was my only warning before I felt a sharp impact against the back of my knee joint, one of the few vulnerabilities in Tormentian physiology. My leg buckled. I spun, slicing the air with my armored forearm, and caught a glimpse of Trent rolling away from the strike. "Your pupils dilate right before you move," he explained, already back on his feet. "Gives away your timing." I roared in frustration. How was this possible? I had fought and defeated champions from species with natural advantages humans couldn't dream of: extra limbs, precognition, acid blood, telekinesis. Yet this child was anticipating my every move. We circled each other warily. I feinted with my lower arms, then struck with my upper right, aiming for a disabling blow to his shoulder. Trent actually parried by deflecting my wrist with his forearm, then stepped inside my guard and drove his elbow into my solar equivalent, right between my secondary breathing membranes. Pain blossomed through my torso. Not serious damage, but enough to stagger me momentarily. I countered with a sweeping low kick that finally satisfyingly connected. Trent went down, rolled, but not fast enough to avoid my follow-up as I pounced, pinning him beneath me. "Got you," I growled triumphantly. Trent didn't seem concerned, despite being trapped under nearly 500 kilograms of angry alien warrior. "Interesting position," he said, as if analyzing a chess move. "But you've made a classic mistake." "What mistake?" I demanded, increasing the pressure of my pin. "You've given me your weight." Before I could decipher this cryptic statement, Trent bridged his hips upward with surprising strength, creating just enough space to shrimp his body sideways and bring one leg up between us. Then the other leg followed, and suddenly both his feet were pressed against my chest. I realized his intent too late. He extended his legs explosively, using my own weight and forward pressure against me, sending me tumbling backward. As I scrambled to regain my footing, Trent was already moving, launching himself at my legs. The next few moments were a confusing tangle of limbs. I felt my legs being controlled, manipulated in ways I couldn't counter. Something wrapped around one of my ankles, bent painfully, and tap. I shouted again, slapping the mat as agony shot through my lower limb. I submit. Trent released me immediately, rolling away and bouncing back to his feet, breathing hard but looking exhilarated. "That's a straight ankle lock," he said between breaths. "Super basic, but effective across most bipedal species, apparently." I sat up, massaging my throbbing ankle, utterly bewildered. "This cannot be happening," I muttered. Agent Campbell stepped forward. "That's 2 submissions. Earth wins. Assessment complete." I wanted to protest, to demand another round, to claim some technicality, but the truth was undeniable. I, Vorax the Invincible, had been decisively defeated by a human juvenile. The implications were staggering. Wincing, I rose to my feet, towering over the humans but feeling smaller than I ever had in my life. "I do not understand," I admitted. "By every metric we measure strength, speed, endurance, natural armor, my species is superior. How is this possible?" Trent shrugged. "Martial arts, man. It's not about being the strongest or fastest. It's about technique, leverage, and using your opponent's energy against them. Plus, I've been wrestling since I was 5 and training BJJ since I was 8. I blinked all 3 eyes in succession. "You have been training in combat for 11 Earth years?" "Yeah, about that. Plus, I watch a ton of MMA and study fight breakdowns online. My coach says I'm a natural." Coach Barrett, who had been silent throughout the second round, finally spoke. "Trent has what we call kinesthetic intelligence. He can see a movement once and replicate it perfectly. Best natural athlete I've ever coached." I looked at Trent with new understanding. "You are not a typical example of your species, are you?" Trent laughed. "I mean, I'm pretty good, but I'm not even the best in the state. Joey Kaminsky from West Lakeside pinned me in 30 seconds last year. And he's nothing compared to the Olympic guys or professional fighters." My blood ran cold. "There are better warriors than you among humans?" "Thousands," Coach Barrett confirmed. "Trent's talented, but he's still developing. Give him a few more years." I needed to sit down. The implications for the Galactic Council's assessment were catastrophic. If human juveniles could defeat me using nothing but technique and training, what would their elite warriors be capable of? "I need to speak with my superiors," I said faintly. Agent Campbell nodded. "Of course. But first, I believe we should discuss diplomatic relations. Your assessment has revealed certain truths about our species that perhaps warrant a revision of our standing with your Galactic Council." I couldn't argue with that. The assessment had revealed truths indeed, just not the ones I'd expected. "Will I be in trouble?" Trent asked, looking suddenly concerned. "I mean, for beating you? I don't want to start an interstellar war or anything." Despite everything, I found myself laughing. "No, young warrior. If anything, you have likely prevented one. The Council sends champions like me to assess potential threats. Species that perform poorly are sometimes dealt with preemptively." Agent Campbell's expression hardened. "Is that so?" But I continued quickly. "Species that demonstrate exceptional combat capability are considered too dangerous to antagonize. They are offered alliance instead." The tension in the room eased slightly. "So we pass?" Trent asked hopefully. With distinction, I confirmed, rubbing my still throbbing arm. "I will be recommending immediate alliance protocols and technology exchange programs." Coach Barrett exhaled loudly. "Well, that's a relief. Trent, you just saved Earth. But you're still wrestling in the semi-final," and he checked his timepiece. 8 minutes. Trent's eyes widened. "Oh man, I forgot. I need to warm up again." As the young human jogged off to prepare for his next, apparently less significant battle, I turned to Agent Campbell. Your species is not what we expected, I admitted. We get that a lot, she replied with a small smile. Will you stay to observe the rest of the tournament? It might provide additional insight for your assessment. I considered this. My pride demanded that I return to my ship immediately, lick my wounds, and prepare my excuses for the council. But my curiosity and a newfound respect won out. Yes, I decided. I would like to see more of these human combat techniques. And so I, Vorax the Invincible, found myself sitting awkwardly on reinforced benches beside human spectators who had cautiously returned to the venue, watching adolescent humans grapple with each other in ritualized combat. The technical skill on display was both impressive and terrifying. Even the least talented among them demonstrated techniques that would be effective against many species I knew. When Trent's semi-final match began, I observed with new appreciation. He won in under 2 minutes, using a maneuver called a double leg takedown followed by something the crowd cheered as a half Nelson to pin his opponent. The movements were fluid, efficient, and devastatingly effective. As the tournament progressed, I sent periodic updates to the council through Plex. Their responses grew increasingly alarmed, then thoughtful, and finally accepting. By the time Trent won his final match to become regional champion, new orders had arrived. Champion Vorax, Plex communicated. The council has reviewed your assessment and is most disturbed by the implications. They are preparing a diplomatic delegation to Earth immediately. You are to maintain position and establish peaceful contact. Under no circumstances are you to engage in further combat with humans. Repeat, do not fight any more humans. I sent back a simple acknowledgement, resisting the urge to add that no further warnings were necessary. I had learned my lesson. After the awards ceremony, where Trent received a surprisingly modest metallic token for his achievements, I approached him one final time. Young warrior, I said formally, you have brought great honor to your species this day. The Galactic Council will send representatives to establish formal relations with Earth. Trent beamed. Cool. Will you be coming back too? I hesitated. That seems unlikely. My role was assessment only. And my pride couldn't take another encounter like today's. That's too bad. I was hoping you could teach me some of your moves. I bet alien wrestling has some techniques I could use at state finals. I stared at him, dumbfounded. After thoroughly defeating me, he wanted to learn from me? The audacity, no. The humility of it was startling. Perhaps I found myself saying I could arrange a cultural exchange. Our combat methods may differ, but there is clearly much we could learn from each other. Later, as I prepared my ship for departure, I reflected on the day's events. The council would not be pleased with my performance, but they couldn't argue with my assessment. Humans were not to be underestimated. Despite their fragile appearance and relatively brief lifespans, they had developed combat techniques that could neutralize nearly any physical advantage. But more concerning than their fighting prowess was their attitude. Trent had approached combat with neither fear nor malice, but with curiosity and even joy. He fought not to destroy but to test himself, and to learn. The implications were both reassuring and terrifying. A species that viewed combat as a path to self-improvement rather than simply destruction might not be aggressive conquerors, but they would be nearly impossible to conquer. As Earth shrunk to a blue dot behind me, I composed my final report to the Council. Assessment of Species 4873b, designation humans, combat capability rated exceptional. Recommendation, immediate alliance. Note, under no circumstances should hostile action be considered. These humans don't just fight to win, they fight to understand. Given enough time, they will learn to counter any advantage we possess. They adapt, they analyze, they overcome. And strangest of all, they seem to enjoy the process. The Council, in their wisdom, took my recommendation seriously. Within one standard cycle, the first official diplomatic delegation arrived on Earth. technology exchanges began. Cultural representatives were appointed. And I, Vorax, the once Invincible, found myself assigned as combat liaison to Earth, specifically to something called the Olympic Training Center. The Council claimed it was a prestigious assignment, a recognition of my unique experience with humans. We all knew it was punishment for my embarrassing defeat. But strangely, as I began working with human combat specialists, some of whom, terrifyingly, made Trent look like a beginner, I found myself enjoying the assignment, learning, adapting, growing. Perhaps these humans were influencing me more than I realized. Oh, and Trent. He went on to win his state championship using a modified version of a tormention grappling technique I taught him. The footage went viral globally, causing quite the stir among human combat sports enthusiasts and giving the Council's diplomatic team significant headaches regarding unauthorized technology transfer. But that's another story entirely. For now, let this be a warning to any species considering the conquest of Earth. Don't. Just don't. You might think your natural advantages, be they strength, speed, extra limbs, or even advanced technology, will ensure your victory. The humans will prove you wrong, probably while explaining exactly how they're doing it. And worst of all, they'll make you thank them for the lesson. Trust me on this one.